free will and predetermined destiny both do and don't exist depending on the angle with which you look at it. And as we know by now, my content is informed by the philosophy of non-dual Shiva Tantra. Non-duality meaning not two, non-duality meaning not this or that, rather this and that. I align with panpsychism, basically stating that everything is conscious in our universe. It just doesn't have the human-centric version of what consciousness looks like. So the reason I say this is because I don't believe consciousness to be an emergent property, meaning I don't believe consciousness is an effect of some catalyst or some cause. Consciousness is always there. What I want to be clear about is self-awareness. I think people define consciousness differently, so I would be curious to see what other people feel about this. But there is, in my view, a level of integrated information that can happen within a system to where you go from just something being conscious, interacting, communicating, to gaining a sense of self-awareness. And the self part is really important. So before I talk about self, I would like to also bring up a concept called time reversal symmetry, which states that there are equations of motion that allow us to perfectly predict the starting point of a system simply by knowing the state of the system at any later time. And this kind of made me think of that question, I don't know if it's universal, like what cereal to have for breakfast, and you feel like you were deciding at will at random, but if you were to take account every factor, seen or unseen, observable or not observable, you may be able to develop a highly complex type of equation that has a predictive level that is almost with 100% accuracy. I always like to say almost. I don't know if we can ever do 100% totally. You have to think about what purpose self-awareness serves, because it is our job in the collective consciousness to help regulate the collective consciousness. But of course, society is in absolute disarray. Now, why is this? So when we are self-aware, we can do self-reflection, and we are able to auto-regulate. You know, we have now turned autonomous, like a button turned on, zoop, and then we can keep going. And it's a place where interdimensional, multidimensional intelligence can help collaborate in this world, in this society. It is also fertile ground for imposing egoic will. And that is where we start having like the concept of I, and this is also where we have this desire to do a lot of control over our reality, an excess level. And if there's excess, there's the concept of not doing excess, like much less, and then there's like the right amount. So what would that right amount look like? I would say that's the balance between the ego and the soul. It almost makes me wonder if there's almost like a drop-off point. Can there be so much intelligence and self-awareness, some node, autonomous node in this greater like collective consciousness neural network can get to where it actually leads to separation? Because ego is the separation from divine will or God consciousness. You see yourself as I, right? When you say I, you don't mean to say, oh, I don't want to be connected to something. But at an implicit level, what's happening is when you say I, and you identify with something, then you're also saying things you don't identify with. So this is you, everything else is not. But the thing is, the cosmos are everything, including you. And so when we don't have this awareness and realization, we operate more from the ego and less from the soul. And the soul has this way of balancing, realizing your self-illuminating conscious awareness. The ego provides a trajectory with desire and where you would like to go in life. The ideal place you would want is, you would want the harmony between the two. But I was kind of thinking, you know, making this little, I don't know if people can read it, but what if there really is like a drop-off point where you can gain so much intelligence and the sense of self that you become so absorbed in the concept of self that you've just gone rogue. You're a rogue node in the collective consciousness ecological neural network, right? And when we are taken away from God consciousness, we enter hell, okay? Because it's separation. So what we really want to aim for is a unity, because Hell is this absence of God consciousness being present. So when we are totally into the concept of self and that we have entire free will, it's also a Herculean amount of cognitive load on us too. We feel like we must control every variable in our internal and external lives all of the time. This is huge. It would like make your CPU in here burst. There's not that balance of surrender, because we personify words like surrender. We think that it's something kind of dorky and woo woo when it's actually information theory, computer science, the cosmic neuroscience, and tantric philosophy, quantum physics, all operating in their highest intelligence. So while this doesn't necessarily solve whether there's free will or not, it's because there's not one answer. If you're looking at it from the lens of you doing something, if you identify with anything physically, then yes, in that sense, free will exists. But if you're looking at things in terms of unity consciousness, then everything is just playing out. You just happen to be aware that you're part of that playing out. If you're worried about whether you have any form of control in your life, you absolutely do. But I wouldn't call it control. My first therapist in 2019 actually said the difference between control and empowerment means that when you're wanting to be in control, you want to do everything to control the outcome. When you're empowered, you will do everything that you would like to do that aligns with you in spite of the outcome. So also the aspect too is you have some high control belief systems in society too that basically say that you are following this big will and you have no place in something. And then you have this other crowd of thinking that's like, no, reality is entirely generated by you and everything that happens is your fault, every minute detail. When those two things aren't really true either. You're actually co-creating reality with higher intelligence. So it's also not so bad to have the concept of ego and I. It just needs to be alchemized and utilized properly to know where you stand and where you can be within your lane, to know that you can work with what you've got and let divine will take care of the rest. You are the co-creator of this reality and you are not alone, and you are empowered more than you know.